Hello and welcome to the Efficio podcast. Today is Wednesday, the 1st of April. My name is Simon Lipscomb, and this is the first in a series of podcasts we're releasing where we discuss the myriad and complex issues that have been thrown up around the present COVID crisis with a number of our subject matter experts from across our business. And today continues to be a challenging and complex day. So sadly, we've seen the death toll rise from the virus and other side impacts. So there's talk today about Virgin Atlantic needing a rescue package very urgently, and even Wimbledon's now being cancelled. So the scale of this crisis and the flow of news and changes and fluid nature of it doesn't seem to be abating or going away. So we wanted to take this opportunity to kind of talk to people and understand the impacts, particularly around issues to do with procurement and the categories within that. So today I'm very, very pleased to be joined by my colleague Charles Blair, who's one of our subject matter experts, and I'll let Charles introduce himself. Hi, Charles.
Yeah, hi Simon, thanks for that. Hi everyone listening, Charles Blair, I'm principal at Efficio, and I lead our IT sourcing practice, 8 years at Efficio and had about 12 years in industry. So here today to talk about COVID and the impact on the IT category.
So thanks, Charles. And so what are you seeing? I mean, what are the impacts on the IT category at the moment?
Well, I think very much depends on the industry, I think, and how ahead of the curve each organisation is, and how mature it is in terms of its procurement. But I think how much you rely on humans still, how much you leverage the cloud, how much good practice procurement you have, all makes a difference. But overall, I'd say the full force of impact is yet to hit. So it will, and in the meantime, I think everyone's focused on cost and EBITDA, but ultimately, there's something in the pipeline. So, but procurement's been thrust onto the stage. It's not just cost though; it's also operational impact that we're seeing. So companies, in terms of day-to-day, keeping the lights on in the IT operations, there is a potential risk associated to that as well. So yeah, you can break it down to a few different things. I think if you at a simple level, we're talking about the disruption to manufacturing in the Far East and the disrupted supply chains around equipment. So if you're still operating an on-premise infrastructure and things like that, you may find that there's limited availability of the hardware that you need. So capacity can become a bit of a constraint. Maybe there's some performance issues that you're experiencing due to the demand shifting and things like that. So, from a supply chain point of view, there's an impact. And then, of course, there's the human element. So, suppliers still have people. Yes, there's automation and all that good stuff, but there's still ultimately people providing supplier services who aren't immune to COVID. So performance is going to be hindered to some degree. All the social distancing, potential unavailability of staff, and if those staff have intimate knowledge about you as a client, then it poses a challenge in terms of service continuity. And I think speed and quality is going to see an impact. That hit by a bus analogy is still very relevant. So if someone's key to a particular service not available, then if they get hit by a bus or hit by the virus, or a bus full of people with the virus, then it's going to have a big impact. So people are going to start thinking about their sourcing strategies in terms of make versus buy. Scalability is another one. So as I said, demand profiles are shifting. So things like bandwidth and on-site support, being able to up your bandwidth and probably downscale your on-site support because everyone's working at home, flowing that through into your commercial arrangements is pretty key. But what we see is quite often lots of legacy. So organizations that have got a static commercial arrangement with the supplier where actually some sort of capacity on demand model and elastic pricing model would have been useful, are going to be feeling some of the pain. So yeah, they're the sort of main areas I'd say at the moment, besides the obvious overall cost agenda.
And if I'm listening to this and I'm a CPO or an IT director that's under enormous pressure from all different areas of the business around this issue, what should I be considering to kind of mitigate the impact, and where should I start?
Good question. So I think for me, actually, the most of what needs to be done is something that should be done anyway in terms of good practice sourcing. So, but unfortunately, when times are good, lots of growth, everyone's focused on projects and buying strong specs and high specs and time to market becomes more of a priority, whereas at the moment, clearly cost is a focus. So you need to sort of unravel some of that and try and focus back into the classic demand levers. You know, if you're looking at quick wins and things, then you want to be collaborating with the business to really understand the true needs of the business in these times of potential austerity. So it seems really straightforward, but actually just really understanding spend in the first instance is the key. So what you don't want to do is just head off, desperately trying to slash and burn cost everywhere, because, potentially there's a critical service that you're touching, which you shouldn't. Equally, there may be a spend view that you have, which isn't accurate, cost isn't accurate or whatever. So really get your spend data and really understand it with your stakeholders. Who owns it? How much is it? How critical is it? What's the commercial model, and how addressable is it? So, if it's due to renew, great. If it's not, then what can you do? Are there clauses in the contract that you can leverage to get out or benchmark? Force majeure is a good example of that. But really, you need to develop this view of your spend, your addressability, and the knowledge about what it serves in terms of IT service. And what the impact could be if you start playing with it. So ultimately, that'll give you a priority list. It will give you views whether you still need it or not. If you need it, then maybe you can wait. So put stuff on hold. Maybe you can twiddle the knobs on it. So elastic capacity on demand type contracts are great in this scenario because you can just tune it down. But maybe you need it as it is, but you just need a better deal. So there's going to be a bit of termination, a bit of optimization. The barn levers are going to be key in this instance. So, sorry, wax lyrical, but really in the prep is key. And then you get into things around risk mitigation. So, just being proactive around checking on capabilities of the suppliers to continue to deliver. There's a risk of non-performance, so just make sure that you're aware of what their current situation is, and make sure that they've got sufficient cover to protect knowledge and things like that. Scalability. So if you don't have scalability in your agreements, then you probably want to start looking for changes to those agreements to have a more accommodating commercial arrangement. And then, of course, you've got suppliers that maybe don't have any fixed commitments, so they're not obligated to do certain things. So you probably want to get some SLAs and KPIs and things like that negotiated into your deals. And on the supply chain side, I think everyone's going to start looking at dual sourcing. So if for example, one of your vendors of hardware has a mass shortage, but actually because they're manufacturing in China and the supply chain is X, maybe actually it's worth looking at a supplier who manufactures in a different region or has a different supply chain model there. You can actually leverage their products to mitigate that risk. And in the short term, there's things like demand management again. So you can look at reviewing and refresh cycles of assets. So do you need the new iPhone now? Can you wait a year? That kind of thing. Could you sweat the asset of a printer for an extra year or two? What's the impact of it going down? It's not huge. So ultimately just designing sourcing strategies with a balance of that contingency and maintaining that competitive tension as well. So that they're the sort of areas that are worth looking at.
Thanks, Charles. And I guess we're all kind of right at the heart of this at the moment, and it seems to be I talked about it at the start. There's a fairly constant flow of relatively negative views and unpleasant talk around this issue. Do you see any positives coming from this, either now or the when we come out the other side?
Well, I think everyone will have toilet roll, which is a good start. But I think for procurement, from what we see, it's going to really be a wake-up call for any organisation who hasn't invested in that area. So having immediate availability of insight to the spend, for one, knowing who the suppliers are and what they do and what those costs are. I mean, there's probably some pretty large gaps being plugged at the moment, because ultimately there needs to be a bottom line improvement, and you need to be able to trace any actions that you make down to the bottom line. So good procurement really adds good value there. I think procurement is going to be elevated. So I think strategies is going to be started to be reviewed. So whether there's single suppliers or outsource arrangements, their ability to deliver current and in the future is going to be subject to review. And cost models and legacy cost models and legacy technology will come into focus, because if you're not on the cloud path and things like that, then you're probably not on an elastic pricing model. And there's also operational constraints with that sort of environment. So I think business cases to do transformation and reduce that technical debt will probably get prioritized. So I think it's going to be a catalyst for change, and I think procurement are going to be well positioned in that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Charles. That was really, really interesting. And thank you also to everyone that's listened to this. As we said at the start, this is part of a series of podcasts we're doing where we'll be talking to our subject matter experts and customers and clients around COVID and the issues it's throwing up. So we hope you enjoyed it. We hope you found it useful. Please, if you have any questions or comments, let either myself or Charles know. This will be released, so please comment on LinkedIn or the other social channels, or email us directly. But yeah, thank you, Charles. That was really interesting, appreciated, and thank you to everyone for listening.